Hello. My name is Kristen, and I am obsessed with all things play-based and child-led learning. Truly obsessed. I am here to help you navigate the messy and the magical on your journey to a play-based program. It is truly magical on the other side, and I want you to feel each day what I feel when I walk into my classroom. I am the homeschool mama to 4. I'm the founder of a play and nature-based preschool and forest school, and I am here to cheer you on. I'm ready. Are you ready? Let's get going. I have Linda McGurk here on the podcast today. Linda is a Swedish-American freelance writer and author who believes life is better outside. She is the author of There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather, a Swedish mom's secret for raising healthy, resilient, and confident children. And her newest book, it's out now, is titled The Open Air Life. And I'm going to invite Linda to tell us the tagline of that book because there's a word in there that's really hard for me to pronounce. And so we're going to let you do it. So The Open Air Life.
Discover the Nordic art of Friluftsliv and embrace nature every day.
Oh my goodness. I look
There
at the
you go.
word and well, the first thing when I heard you say it the first time, my first thought was like Fruit Loops. I don't know why, but
Oh, that's
so
too funny.
I know. And it's like, and I come from I'm in Minnesota. So we're like, you were like your babies over here. We're like your
I know.
lost cousins way over here in
Yeah,
Minnesota.
I think
This
the
is,
most Swedish of all the states, I think.
yeah.
So full of people with Nordic ancestry. So
Yeah,
that's
we
pretty
have a
cool.
whole entire store dedicated just to Scandinavian items right
Wow,
downtown, like a few
cool.
blocks from my office here. So,
Yeah, that doesn't
Ufta.
surprise me.
Yeah. Do you say
Mhm.
Ufta?
Ufta,
That
I'm
might
not
be
sure. How do you
Norwegian. Is that Norwegian?
How do you
Ufta.
spell it? How do you spell it?
Okay. I don't know if I think it's UFFDA would maybe be like the slang way to spell it, but there might be a better way to spell it.
Okay, I'm
But
gonna go ahead and say that that's Norwegian because that doesn't sound or look
Ufta.
familiar. Ufta. No,
Okay,
no,
then it's not Swedish. No, it's got to be Norwegian.
Yeah, must
Ufta.
be.
Yeah, so we say that all the time over here. Ufta. So I'm thrilled to have you here. I read your book, There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather. I was going to say bad clothing, and then I had to catch myself. There's no such thing as bad weather because I founded a nature and forest preschool, and that was one of the things that we would tell parents. And so when your book came out and it had that title, I was like, I have to read this. And everything in it resonated with what we were doing with young children. So it was just a very affirming journey through that book. And then
Right.
your newest one, The Open Air Life, was it's beautiful. Like the imagery that you use, it like calls for you to go outside. So I want the background. I want all the Linda story and like where you come from, where you are, what you're doing, and like why you're doing it.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Kristen. I am a big fan of yours too. Followed you on Instagram for quite a while, and I've found that our mutual, love and devotion to play sort of is that's our common denominator. And then, of course, I found out about you founding nature preschool as well, which is really cool. I was born and raised in Sweden, but I've lived in the States for 15 years, mostly in Indiana.
Okay.
And that's also where I had my daughters. And that's when I decided to write my first book, because I realized then that there was such a stark contrast, just their situation in Indiana when I compared to my own childhood back in Sweden, and also what my friends were doing with their kids in Sweden at the same time. our children led such different lives that I felt like, I think there's a book here somewhere. There was
Oh,
this kind of, yeah, from that sort of culture clash. Um, so that's when my first book came about, and it's all about outdoor play, of course, which is considered the most important part of childhood, or essential to childhood here in the Nordic countries. And so that first book is a whole sort of celebration of outdoor play, and manifesto, if you will, for outdoor play. Because
yeah.
until I moved to the States, I thought it was like a universal child rearing practice. And then I realized that no, something is about to get lost here, or has already gotten lost. And we
Mhm.
need to bring some of this back. Um, and then the open air life is sort of uh not a it's not a sequel, but it's I delve into the Friluftsliv more, which is the Nordic a Nordic tradition and lifestyle, if you will, of just finding joy in nature for personal wellness, and without any pressure to compete or achieve anything. And that goes kind of hand in hand with a theme for my first book. And as of 4 years back, actually, I returned to Sweden 4 years ago. So I live here now with my two daughters, who are 11 and 14
Okay.
now. And yeah, so that's the kind of the short story behind the books. But of course, um, I have a strong passion and drive for this whole children and nature movement. So I'm a writer, I'm a journalist initially, and so this is my way of contributing to the movement, I suppose. Writing is what I do,
Yes.
is what I can do to help further this movement. So that's why I've written the books, and I hope to keep writing books that will inspire people to get outside with their kids, and to get outside themselves.
Definitely. Well, and I think beyond writing, you model it. I mean, you live this lifestyle and you promote this
Mhm.
lifestyle for your own children.
I do, yeah.
How was the transition for your children when you moved from the United States back to Sweden?
I'd say it was a pretty smooth transition, because I had, ever since I moved to the US and I had my daughters, I intentionally tried to infuse Friluftsliv in their lives, in our lives, because it was such a strong part of my heritage. I really wanted them to have a strong connection with nature. And so we did a lot of the things that my that I did growing up in Sweden, but we did them in Indiana, and sometimes in the middle of winter, and people thought I was crazy, and I kept doing them anyway.
Yes.
People saw me out in the playground in the middle of winter, and they were like, "Wow, you must really, really like winter." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I suppose I like winter, but to me, it's just another, like, it doesn't matter if it's winter or spring or fall or summer.
Yeah.
We're outside every day. It doesn't matter. Like, I see something to love in every season, and I want my kids to experience all the season. I do not want them to hibernate through half the year.
Yes.
So, but yeah, so to circle back to your question, I think it was a pretty smooth transition, because they kind of knew what was coming, and we were back here for almost 6 months when I wrote my first book, and that was
Oh,
back in 2016 is when we were back.
okay.
Yeah, so we were here and lived here for 6 months, and that's what the first book is about. It follows our journey back here, and as I enrolled them in Swedish preschool and school. um so they'd tried some of that, so I think they knew what was coming.
Definitely. Um, okay. So free loose sleeve. Did I say that right? Free loose
Yes,
sleeve. Free
that's
loose
very
sleeve.
good. Hmm.
That is how would you, um, how would you describe the definition of that word?
So yeah, so it's a little tricky. It doesn't have an English translation, right? Just like
Yeah.
Hygge.
Yeah.
And it loosely translates to open air life. So it's about
Okay.
being outside, being a part of nature. Usually revolves around simple, slow activities in nearby nature. It's all about getting to know your local landscape. And it's typically, inexpensive. It could be as simple as just walking around your neighborhood or playing in some local woods, foraging, cooking over an open fire,
Mhm.
going swimming. But like I said previously, it's non-competitive and it's non-motorized. So that kind of sets it apart from outdoor recreation, which is a much broader term and which is more what I think of when we think of being, outdoors in the US or elsewhere outside of the Nordic countries. We might think more of sports, um, and more like extreme activities or even like races and things like that,
Yes.
which competitions and races are not really part of Friluftsliv. And I think this aspect is important because I think we live in such a competitive society today, and the U.S. especially is very competitive, and that's kind of trickled down to
Yep.
childhood, like this whole hustle
Yep.
culture. And this is a zone where kids can just be like, they because they also have all the sports and all the activities and all the, all the academics where they have to constantly achieve things. And this is
Yes.
something that they can do and not have to worry about any of that. It's okay to just be and to feel joy in nature. And that's what I love about it. And it's also something that people usually do as a family.
Yes.
It's something that you do across generational boundaries because everybody can find something to love about it. If
Mm.
you go out in the woods, like everybody can find something to do, something that benefits them, just both on a physical and mental level. So I love that about nature to this day. And like I said, my oldest daughter is 14 now.
Hmm.
Going for walks in the woods is what we still do together, like that's our main way of spending time together, and I
Oh,
love it.
that's really neat.
Yeah, and
Oh,
I'm hoping to hold on to that for you know as long as I can. um
definitely.
yeah.
When I started reading The Open Air Life, I immediately, when you were describing the word freely,
You were doing just fine.
free loose sleeve,
Yes.
free loose sleeve.
Yes.
I immediately thought that's vacation brain for me, or that's camper brain. Like that's
Yeah.
camper life. That's like being at my lake cabin with my family. Like that's when you were describing like kind of the feelings around it, that's
Mm,
immediately what I connected with. It was like
right.
this is what it would be for me. And I'm sure that
Yeah.
it's probably different for everybody. And
Mhm.
um I'm sure that everybody at some point in their life hopefully has been able to feel that at in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just a walk that they were able to take with
Yeah.
somebody growing up if they didn't have access to the outdoors like some children. So that's
Right.
kind of what I correlated it with. But
Yeah.
then I immediately started thinking, okay, so how can I bring that little piece of like the camper or the cabin or um like I grew up on a old farm in Missouri for part of my life, and like the feeling of just being free as a child to go run around and play and take risks, and
Right.
the old barn that's falling down. Like, how can I just offer little moments like that for my own children? So it really got me
Mm,
thinking about what that looks like
yeah.
in my own life. And the
Yeah.
other thing that I thought was so cool, I kind of was making connections. So you have the 10 core principles, and those are things
Mhm.
that you were just describing, like
Right.
non-motorized and very simple and um or not competitive.
Right.
like disconnecting from things. And I
Yeah.
immediately thought, okay, this is like every single principle of the forest school that I founded,
Right.
the nature preschool. And I'm like, that is so cool that this concept like summarizes forest
Yeah.
school for the children
Yes.
that have the opportunity or have the opportunity to be able to do that. So
Yeah.
that was really
Yeah.
cool to make those connections.
Absolutely. And here in Sweden, Friluftsliv is actually it's an important part of both the preschool and school as well. So it's
Yes.
all, part of our culture, of course. And I think the great thing about the forest school movement in the US is that it's really kind of brought that to the US in a fantastic way. I think it's opened a lot of people's eyes to this whole idea. So
Yes.
I think it's been very powerful to see that development in the US. I remember when I started out writing about this topic back in, oh geez, 2013. So yeah, almost 10 years ago now. And I could almost name all the nature
Yes.
preschools in the country. And now there are, I think the last time I checked, there were like 600, and that was a couple of years ago. They were just about to do a new
Mhm.
count. So I'm sure there are even more today.
Yes, there are. We were the sixth nature preschool, according to the Alliance. What is it
Y-
called? Natural Start
Yeah,
Alliance. Yeah, the
yes.
Natural Start Alliance. So we were the
Mm,
sixth in Minnesota, and we
mm,
were the second or the third forest school program.
mm,
And now the interesting thing that I have found, and I don't know if you've witnessed this at all, but the United States kind of did something to forest school that I wasn't really aware of until I saw it firsthand. I went to a nature preschool conference in Seattle and we were able to tour programs, and we went to a forest school, and their forest school was really just traditional preschool outside. And
mm.
I was really taken aback because
Wow.
my understanding of forest school was really based upon Friluftsliv, Frilu
Yes. Yeah.
and and to see children like
Mm,
doing things outside
mm.
that you would find in a traditional preschool, like really long
Yeah.
circle times and calendars that were just put up on a tree. I was like, no,
Mm,
like this is not
yeah.
what it's supposed to be at all.
No. And
So
I
that
suppose, yeah, I suppose that's inevitable when something grows
yeah,
fast, and you get everybody and taking, getting their own, doing their own take
yes,
on it, and things are
yes,
localized. And then there's also, I don't know that there's really a strong body that sort of there's one organization for forest kindergartens in the US, but I don't know that how influential it's been in sort of creating common standards.
yes,
And so I think some of that is probably, yeah, a consequence of growing so fast, and maybe not
mhm,
everybody is sort of understanding the core principles of it.
yes.
Yeah.
Do you know, did like the forest school um way, I suppose we would call it, did it originate in Sweden?
It originated in Denmark, actually, in the 1950s.
Okay.
And then it spread to Norway and Sweden from there, and then outside of the Nordic countries as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
But even in like traditional, that's the thing with Swedish preschool though, and Norwegian too. I think even in like conventional preschool, it is very different from preschool in the US. Like, so
Mhm.
first of all, I mean, it's a mix of schooling, and it's actually like a daycare. So it's not something that you take kids to for a few hours just a few times per week. It's for a lot of kids, it's like it's the child care. It's a nursery for
Yeah.
working parents. And so so that alone makes it a little different. But then also all, the curriculum for the national curriculum for the preschool, it sort of guarantees a child's right to play outside, both in like natural environments and planned environments. And it is very focused around play. So it's not this sort of academic preschool that dominates, in the US at all. And that's what surprised me so much when my oldest daughter, when I enrolled her in preschool, it was so different. Like,
Yes.
yeah, in Sweden, it's all, it's all about, I could read it from the curriculum, the national curriculum. It says education in the preschool should lay the foundations for lifelong learning. That's like the core principle. It's like this holistic view. And so I've been very inspired by this curriculum, and also, both forest schools and traditional schools are based on this, and it's got a whole chapter on play.
Yes.
It says playing is an important activity in its own right, and it talks about all the benefits of play and should play a central role in the education. And this is something that all preschools have to follow, because preschool, we have universal preschool here. So this is like, so this is what they have to follow.
That's beautiful and amazing. I think there's a lot of people in the play-based world over here in the United States that are very, very have a lot of trepidation about universal pre-K here, because the standard is academic based preschools that maybe say play is the way that children learn, but don't understand what play really truly is.
Or they think that play is circle time, where kids get to stand for or sit for 20 minutes and then circle around, rotate, but that's, I know.
In the chapter on play in your first book, There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather, you talked about how you must have moved to back to Sweden when one of your children was like going into like their second year of preschool or something.
Yeah.
And you were talking about the kind of the flow of the day, that the teacher was kind of describing to you what their day is like. And I was like, that is exactly what the children in the nature preschool I founded, that's what their day is. And so it felt so good to just be like, oh, we are like, there are schools here in the US doing things great. We are the minority, and we are the voices that aren't heard probably as loud as everybody else. And we're the ones, like we were labeled the hippie preschool here in town, like the one that everybody's scared to send their kids to because they think they're not going to be ready, air quotes, for kindergarten. But then if you were to dissect the word kindergarten and where that originated from, it's completely opposite of what's being done.
Oh, I know. Yeah. And like I said, my daughter, she just went to a regular traditional preschool. That wasn't even a forest school or anything like that. It was just a regular, that's what most kids do here.
Definitely.
So
so I want to chat with you a little bit about play as an adult and what that looks like for you in your open air life.
Play, I hope I never stop playing. I still play with my kids. Like I said, I have a teenager now, and she may not want to admit it, but but she loves to play still, and my 11-year-old loves to play too. I try to model that to my kids. Whenever we're outside in nature, I try to I'll climb trees. I love playing in the water. Just anyway, like nature just offers so many different opportunities to play. We have we often go out and cook food together and play. Like, you're not supposed to you're always told kids are not supposed to play with fire, but in a controlled environment. And as long
Yes.
as there's no risk of forest fires, Swedish kids definitely play with fire.
Yes, please definitely play with fire.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, so
so
yeah, and yeah,
okay. So for me, play is, well, really anything that's just intrinsically driven that you are doing, and it, I mean, because you want to, really.
right. Yeah,
So it, for me, like, it doesn't have to look like, as an adult, being a child. It can
right.
be like, for me, it's often like going for a walk with my son down the street,
Mhm.
and so this is an example. So I had rained a lot this spring here, and every time we would go for a walk, there would be giant, like, balls of worms all over the place in the sides of the road.
Yeah,
And like, my son and I became super curious about these worms, and it was like a whole theme for a whole entire week. And we were
yeah.
both so invested in these worms and trying to save them
I
and
love it.
figuring out why there's so many and like why
Yeah,
they're so skinny. And like, that is a form of play for me, just being
absolutely.
curious and like
Yes.
discovering about the world organically.
Yeah, having
And
an open mind about things
yes.
and feeling awe, and also another thing that sort of another common denominator I think for play and friluftsliv is that there doesn't have to be like a set purpose. You don't
Yes.
have to have a certain goal. You just do it because it's fun.
Exactly.
It gives you joy, and that's the same with friluftsliv. I so often I have people stressing about coming up with activities for their kids, and I have so many people ask me about activities, and I understand the need for that, or the need to sort of have something, or plan, or but you don't but the thing about Friluftsliv is that you don't have to have a set agenda. You can just The important part is to just get outside, and then
Yes.
whatever happens after that, that's up to you. And that will be up to there are so many factors that can influence that, like you said, if when there's been a rain, a heavy rain, yeah, you'll find worms, and there
Yeah.
are puddles to jump in, and I love that part. There are so many parts of my life that are scheduled and rigid,
Yes.
and things that I don't have any control over. I just love the way Friluftsliv it is free. It really is free because
Yes.
you don't have to plan it necessarily, and you can just go out and do it, in a
So,
simple forms.
yes. So now I'm going to pose this question. So what do you say to parents, or maybe your own children, when they say, "I'm bored," when you're outside?
I will so well, my kids don't anymore because they know better.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Because you're probably like, "Good. I'm glad you're bored."
yeah, I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, well, I look forward to you finding something to do. Like I look
Yeah,
forward to, yeah, seeing what you can come up with.
definitely.
Um, and I might toss out an idea or two, but
Yeah.
like mainly I try to just get them to really think for themselves. And if you just dare to, I think, stand back and give it time, they will find something to do.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know how many times I've sent my kids outside to play while I finish folding laundry or doing some other
Mhm.
boring adult
Yeah.
chore. And I'm like, go outside and play. I'll be there in 5 minutes. And they're like, at first, just complaining and not wanting to go. And then they finally go outside, and I come out after some time, and they're out there, and they've invented a whole new game, or yeah, doing whatever. Like one time I found them on the ground, like on their backs, legs and arms sprawled out, and they were eyes closed, like in the driveway. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like, we're playing dead because we're waiting to see if the turkey vultures are going to come pick our eyes out.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, okay. Well, that seemed a bit morbid at first, but then I thought about it. I was like, okay, well, this is actually a pretty interesting, this is an interesting scientific experiment for, they weren't that old at the time. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so they got a hypothesis.
Yeah.
Because they were actually asking questions about how do the turkey vultures find their food? How do they understand that animals on the ground are dead? And so they were wanting to find out.
Oh
So
my gosh.
yeah, so they pretended to be dead, but yeah,
Then
no
nothing ever came.
nothing ever came. So so apparently turkey vultures are, yeah, they are smarter than they thought,
Yeah.
I
They
suppose.
must work on smell or
Moral
something.
of the story.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
They're too
Um,
smart.
one time, it was just this past summer, I was out in my backyard and I like to just sit on my lawn chair and read books in the summer in the sunshine, because
Mhm.
I live in Minnesota and we get like 3 months of summer and the rest is all winter. So I was enjoying my sunshine and my little guy comes out and he's 8 and he like plays next to me for a little bit and then he's like, I'm bored. And they know when they say I'm bored, like that I'm just gonna say, good, I'm
Yeah.
glad, because that's when the best imagination happens. So
Right.
he laid down and he was just like in the grass and he was in his own head. Like I could tell he was kind of like making up his own games in his head and I could hear him making noises. And um all of a sudden he's like, well, he was there for quite a while. And then he's like, Mom, look at this. And he had taken, so there's like a little bald patch of like earth kind of in the grass. So I made like this little arena and he had taken like little tiny twigs and stones and things and he had made like a whole entire like little world in this tiny little patch of grass. And he
Wow.
was using the little sticks as the people. It was like this little tiny miniature nature world and it
I
was the
love it.
sweetest thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like he never would have had that opportunity had I like filled his
Right.
day with activities or had an
Yeah.
activity planned for him. And I
Mm.
think that that's one of the biggest takeaways here is like less
Yeah.
is more.
Yes,
Mhm.
totally.
And it might be
100%.
uncomfortable for us as adults. It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable to sit in,
Yeah.
to just like sit in that,
Yeah.
just like just being.
Yeah.
But when you do it and you practice it and you just get better and better
Mm.
at it, and then the children that you're with get better and better at it too. And
Yes.
pretty soon, like everybody's just really able to drop in and sink into that nature
Yeah.
play without hesitation anymore.
Yeah.
So it does
Yeah.
take a
I
little
think,
practice.
yeah, it does. And I think for both kids and adults, as you say, but I can wholeheartedly say that nature is the one place where I can really let go of everything. Like it's
Mhm.
so hard when I'm in the house, I'm always like thinking of things I need to do, constantly drawn to my
Me
computer.
too. Mhm.
But once I go outside, my mind immediately tunes into the fact that, okay, this is like the most important thing I have to do right now is to just
Yeah.
be here.
Yeah.
And I think that's what keeps me coming back every time because I can just let go and totally be in this relaxed state. And that's why I've kept taking or bringing my kids outside too because I want them to experience it and I want them to have it as a tool growing up
Yes.
because I mean it's there's so much stress and anxiety and depression among young adults today, that they're going to need it. They're going to need every bit of it. And Friluftsliv is like this cultural resource for them to lean on. And that's why
Yes.
I'm wanting to share it with, the
Yes.
rest of the world too. It's a great thing. And I definitely hope that it'll catch on.
Yes. And you don't have to live near a forest or a lake or a stream or a woods or even a grassy
Exactly.
hill. You can experience this on a rooftop.
Mm. Yes.
You can
Yes.
open a
Can
window. I mean, that's not the greatest example, but like if you
yeah.
live in a big city, open a
Yeah.
window and sit by the
Yes.
window if that's all that you can do.
grow things inside,
Yeah, there,
plant a
yes,
seed,
yes,
in any way that you can bring nature into your lives, is a good thing. And use your local parks for sure. They're a great
yes.
resource.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
yeah,
Okay, I have two more
yeah,
questions for you before we
yeah.
wrap this up based on my audience and what I know. They get asked a lot. So the first is, this is what we hear a lot in childcare here in the United States. Um,
Mm.
my child is sick and can't go outside. How
Mm.
do we respond to that?
So that when they bring them to preschool,
Preschool.
they say,
Mhm,
okay, well, if
mhm.
they're too sick to be outside, they're too sick to go to preschool, would be my
That
response. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Mhm. Um, many
So,
parents like have a misunderstanding that having a cold means they shouldn't go outside.
right, right. No, I'd say, I mean, there's definitely nothing that should indicate, yeah, if the child is so sick they can't get out of bed, then I'd say, yeah, make it an indoor day. But even like if the weather is nice and if my kids are sick and they feel like lying outside, like on the like if they
Yeah.
like being on the deck or whatever, just to get some fresh air. And the sun is good for our immune system, so
Yes.
getting that vitamin D is certainly helpful. But yeah, having a cold is definitely not a reason for staying inside. I mean, you can definitely go outside with a kid that has a runny nose or a cough and things like that. So just let the child's uh their energy levels, they're pretty good at regulating their activity themselves. So
Mhm.
it doesn't have, yeah, obviously if they're sick, don't go on a 5 mile
Yeah.
hike, but
Yeah.
they can still sit outside or just let them move at their own pace, because yeah, they self-regulate pretty well.
Yes.
There's no use in trying to force a child to lie down lie down in their
Yeah.
bed if they're well enough to be up and walking around. So yeah,
Definitely.
that would be my response to that.
And okay, so now what would be your response to it's too cold to go outside?
I would say dress for the weather, and and the kids will be okay.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously there will always be extreme weather events, but
Yes.
you're talking to somebody here who had their kids out during the polar vortex for
Mm,
for probably half hour, and we were just like dressed. We had like, when you're out and it's like -40 with wind chill, you just
yeah.
gotta make sure you don't have any skin exposure, pretty much.
What do you use
Um,
to cover your eyes?
you can put like ski
Yeah.
goggles on.
Yeah.
Or what I used at that time was just like a balaclava, which covers everything. It just has like a thin slit for the eyes,
Yeah. Yeah.
which was okay that time with my kids. But I've seen people put goggles on too.
Yeah. There's
So
a forest school in Minnesota called the Secret Forest Play School. And
yes, I know
they,
them. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yes.
I've loved their pictures on Instagram because they're
Megan.
like,
Yeah.
little kids are all like in ski goggles tromping
Uh-huh.
through the snow in the middle of the winter. And I'm like, wow. Because even in our program is bigger than that. So it's a
Yeah.
little bit more difficult to get
Yeah.
all of those. I mean, we've got like up to 40 kids sometimes. So
Yeah.
having all of those children prepared with ski goggles too.
Yeah.
Plus we serve a little bit younger crowd. So
Right.
but yeah, we take them out in pretty
Yeah.
cold weather here in Minnesota. So it's interesting too, because in the United States, there's such a difference in temperatures from the northern
Yes.
states to the southern states. So
Yeah.
um, there's programs in like the middle of the United States that if it gets to be 30 degrees, they're not going outside.
Oh
Like that's
yeah,
way
I
too
know.
cold. But for
Yeah.
us, like we're way too cold is like
Yeah.
-40.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say even in Indiana, that seemed to be like where the school drew the line pretty much. Like on paper, the temperature was lower than that, but in reality, it was like, around freezing. That's when, they got worried about, I think, parents complaining, and also I always heard that argument, well, it's too rainy, it's too cold, or it's too windy all the time. And that was part of my frustration, coming from a country where you're just like hammered with, there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothes, from the day you're born, essentially. So
oh my
it
goodness.
was just different. And then down in Florida, of course, like 50 is freezing.
I know. It's funny because like I'll go down. We were at Disneyland in California one year, and it was like 50 degrees in the morning when we got up and we're waiting in line to go into Disneyland. And there was like people all over that had on like knit beanies and like Ugg boots. And I was like, wow, like we were in shorts and t-shirts. It was just the difference is so funny. You just become acclimated, your body does.
I mean, it goes to show that people or humans are very adaptable. I mean, you can definitely acclimatize to the climate.
Definitely.
So just dress for the weather.
Yes. Okay, so Linda, tell people where they can find more of you, anything that you want to give people, where can we send them?
Yes, so definitely check out my blog, rainorShineMama.com, where you can sign up for my newsletters to stay up to date. And for a more personal sort of view of my life, Instagram is probably the way to go. Same handle there, RainOrShineMama. And I'm also pretty active on Facebook. So those would be the main three. And my book, of course, is available, or my books are available online pretty much anywhere where books are sold.
Wonderful. Well, it was so wonderful to have you as a guest. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we were finally able to meet digitally, at least.
Too. Me too. All right. You take care. Have a good day, Linda.
Thank you. You too.
Hey, I need you to do me a huge favor. If you liked listening and you want to be able to hear more, can you please go onto iTunes and leave me a 5-star review? I would so appreciate it. And then connect with me on Instagram. It's learning.wild. We'll see you around.